flowers bring wondrous scent, colour and joy to the garden, but they offer way more besides that. Today I'm going to reveal my 3 must-grow flowers for the veggie garden, and I know you're going to love them too. What are they? Well, let's find out. My first must-grow flower is a bit of a stunner. It's comfrey. Comfrey has got it going on. Just look at these flowers. They're gorgeous, drooping clusters of bell-shaped blooms, and they're really, really attracting to bees, especially bumblebees, whose loud, bassy buzz can be heard from some distance as you approach. Comfrey also attracts plenty of hungry pest munchers, such as tiny parasitoid wasps, lacewings and spiders. Now, comfrey flowers are really fast growing. I planted this little lot around me last spring, and they're already beginning to bulk out nicely. Eventually they'll form a really satisfying clump, and this will be a true comfrey patch. Now, comfrey is really easy to grow. It isn't bothered by slugs and can even cope with a little bit of shade, which is ideal back here towards the back of this border. Wild comfrey can self-seed and spread really quite rapidly. It's a bit of a thug, so I've opted for a more garden-friendly variety called Bocking 14. This is sterile and forms neat clumps, so is a great choice for a garden. The real joy of comfrey, however, isn't just in the flowers, fab as they are, it's in these lovely leaves. I'm going to let my comfrey establish for 1 more year before cutting it. So I've come out to this bank of naturalised comfrey to harvest some of these lovely leaves. The stems and the leaves of comfrey have little prickles on them, so it's best to wear some gloves while handling comfrey. Let's get cutting. Comfrey leaves are powerful stuff. You see, comfrey has deep roots that draw up nutrients from far down in the soil. These nutrients accumulate in their leaves in a far more bioavailable form, and we can use that to our advantage in a few different ways. This may look a little bit brutal, but I've cut well above the base of the crown, so this will grow back within literally a month or 2. The leaves contain lots of nitrogen as well as potassium and a whole host of trace elements, which makes them a superb, natural, slow-release fertilizer. So the first way to use them is to simply cut and drop them around plants that will appreciate that extra boost, such as fruit trees, bushes and canes, and as well as fruiting vegetables like, say, tomatoes and squash. You could even combine your comfrey leaves with grass clippings to give your plants even more nutrients to guzzle on. Leave the wilted leaves on top of the soil as a mulch, or dig them in early in the season like a cover crop or green manure to enrich the soil for a future crop. Or dry the leaves, then crumble them into homemade potting mixes for a little extra nutrition. You can also add a few leaves into the bottom of planting holes. This is ideal for fruiting vegetables or for lining, say, the bottom of a potato trench. Then, as the roots grow down, the comfrey leaves will have started to rot down and release all their nutrients back into the soil, giving your plants a real boost. Perfect. But my absolute favourite way to deploy the power of comfrey is to make a quick-acting liquid fertiliser. And it's very, very simple to do. Just gonna pop the leaves into a bucket, so it's about 2/3 to 3/4 full. Just push them in a bit. You can speed up the process by chopping up the leaves first to increase the surface area, but these are fairly small leaves anyway, so I'm not going to bother this time round. And then, once it's got enough leaves in, it's simply a question of covering it over with some lovely fresh water. I'm just using rainwater. And now to finish, I'm just going to cover it over. You could use a towel or a lid, because as comfrey breaks down, it really does rather pong, and this just keeps it from getting a little less, shall we say, fragrant. Personally, I don't rather mind the smell, but that might make me a bit weird. So this is just going to be left for about a month, and then it's good to use. Dilute your liquid fertilizer about 1/3 to 2/3 water and then use it around your fruiting plants. Tomatoes, for example, absolutely love this stuff. And the sludge that's left behind can get tossed onto the compost heap or just add it back around your comfrey clump to return their nutrients for them to continue growing. If you fancy something even stronger, then try making a comfrey concentrate. It's made pretty much in exactly the same way as our comfrey feed, except this time there's no water involved. Just pack your container with your leaves, and then we want to weigh down the leaves, which will help them to break down. So I'm just going to use a couple of bricks for that. What this does, after a few weeks, it produces a really thick, black, almost treacle-like liquid that you can then bottle up and label and use as a really concentrated feed. This time we're going to dilute it 1 part to 15 parts water. While we are down here, by the way, I thought we'd just check in on my grass clippings tea. This batch I started 2 weeks ago for our video on using grass clippings. If you've missed that, I will pop a link to it down below so you can catch that one. Wow, look at that. It's got a really strong green colour, so you know this has got loads of nutrients in it. This lot is higher in nitrogen, so it's great for leafy vegetables. If you happen to have lots of this stuff, alkanet, in your garden, well, you can use it in much the same way as comfrey to make a liquid feed or to drape the leaves around your plants. Now, this is a bit of a weed, so I wouldn't recommend planting it, but it has this wonderful silver lining. Deep tap roots draw up all the nutrients into its leaves, and the flowers, they're really attracting to bees as well. Comfrey and alkanet are both members of the borage family, Boraginaceae, and so is our next flower, borage itself. Borage is even more stunning than comfrey and pulls in even more bees if that's possible, and that's the first reason why borage is so useful. Like comfrey, the starry blue or white flowers of borage attract all manner of bees, especially those raucous bumblebees. In fact, it's so attracting to bees, it's earned it the alternative names such as the bee's friend or bee flower. Bees go bonkers for borage. Sounds like a good headline, doesn't it? Now imagine you've got borage planted at the ends of your various productive vegetable beds. What's that going to do? Well, it's going to create plenty of air traffic as these big, bulky bees move between the flowers, creating a lot of noise and sometimes chaotic movement. And that's going to put off a lot of smaller insects, including many pests. Borage is known to dissuade insect pests such as tomato hornworm and cabbage white butterfly or cabbage worms, probably because of all the frenetic bee activity they create around them. So by simply growing more borage in the veggie garden, you are creating a more intimidating environment for those common pests. As this is a Mediterranean native, it's going to do best in full sunshine. Like comfrey, it's great at drawing up nutrients from down below and storing them in their leaves, so you can harvest those leaves and use them in much the same way as comfrey. But in this instance, I think it's the flowers that will bring home the bacon. The flowers are pretty and edible. Pick the flowers and drop them into drinks as a stargazy garnish, as the crowning glory to a cake, or perhaps drop them into salads along with other edible blooms like nasturtium. Borage flowers have a crisp, refreshing cucumber flavour, just the job for a quenching tumbler of summer punch. Perhaps you could enjoy one while watching more of our videos, or even better, subscribe and hit the bell icon too. And here are the chunky seeds of borage themselves. Now these can be sown any time from late spring to early summer. This is an annual plant that will die back at the end of the season. However, it readily self-seeds. So once it's established, you'll get seedlings year after year, and it'll carry on just like any perennial flower. And here's one of the seedlings here. I sowed these a couple of weeks ago to get a bit of a head start, so let's plant them. Seeing as they are good companions to tomatoes and cabbage family plants, I'm going to plant them next to these guys, and this across the way formation should encourage a good flight path of bees between them. Once borage starts flowering, it should go on for several weeks, but you can always help the process along by deadheading them or removing the old spent flowers, just nipping them off. And in mid-season, you can also cut plants back by about a half to really rejuvenate them. Now, borage is said to improve the flavour of strawberries, so I may well include a few with my strawberry patch as well. Remember, once these plants get going and self-seed for the next season, you can always remove any seedlings you don't want or just transplant them elsewhere. And remember, just like comfrey, they make excellent fodder for the compost heap. The third member of my tempting trio is French marigold, a well-behaved frost-tender annual that needs little introduction. Now, there are lots of other marigolds available, but what I love about French marigolds especially is their compact and neat habit, which means they can sit well-behaved beneath taller plants such as, in this case, tomatoes. It adds a splash of colour to the productive garden, but more usefully for us veggie growers, it attracts a slew of pest predators. Lacewings, hoverflies, tiny wasps, ladybugs or ladybirds, you name it. Marigolds have deep cultural significance in so many places across the world. This is a special plant. In India, they take centre stage to many religious ceremonies, and in Mexico, they're often used to decorate graves. What a lovely idea. These marigolds here in this bed, along with the ones down in the greenhouse, were all started from seed in the spring. They were sown into pots of all-purpose potting mix, lightly covered over, germinated in the warm, and then once they were up, I transferred them into their own plug trays to grow on until it was time for planting them out after the risk of frost. I've done a short video on that, and if you would like to catch it, then I will pop a link to it in the video description below. If you happen to have problems with root knot nematodes in the past, then consider growing marigolds and then digging them in at the end of the season, chopping them up, when they will release natural chemicals back into the soil that will interfere with the life cycle of those nuisance nematodes. Give your marigolds a sunny spot for full blooms and be sure to deadhead them regularly to keep them coming. The flowers can also be eaten in moderation. They have a lovely citrusy tang that makes them great in salads or as a garnish to desserts. Beautiful stuff. Marigolds, comfrey and borage are my must-grow vegetable garden flowers. But what flowers do you find useful? Let me know in the comments. Or for more ideas of superb veggie garden bloomers, check out this video. I'll catch you next time.